Hello, everyone. I'm Jeremy Butler, Chief Executive Officer of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America here in New York City. Thank you all for joining me and as well joining Mary Beth Brueggemann, the President of the Mission Continues. We're excited to be here with you. We're going to have a conversation about a whole variety of topics, but also interested in taking your questions. So feel free to chat those in, and we will try and take them at various times throughout this discussion as we go. So thank you again for joining us. Mary Beth, thank you very much for joining me. Excited to have this conversation. Would love to get to you and things that are going on with the Mission Continues, but if it's all right, wouldn't mind starting a little bit with some history and sort of what led up to you joining the military and kind of the things that got you to the Mission Continues before that. I know you're a Naval Academy graduate, but maybe we start with that. What led to you joining or going with the Naval Academy as opposed to another service academy or maybe another commissioning source?
Sure. Well, hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks, Jeremy. This is exciting. I'm glad to be having this conversation today. I'm looking forward to answering some questions. So I'm actually the daughter of two Peace Corps volunteers, and they met in the Peace Corps, fell in love in the Peace Corps, got married after they left the Peace Corps. And I think that they, forever informed my idea of what service was. We don't have a military history, particularly in my family, so not in my immediate family. So as I was thinking about how I wanted to spend my later years in life, my college days, I think that I was at the time really choosing between, am I going to be in the Peace Corps or am I going to be in a different kind of corps? I didn't know about the Marine Corps at the time. I was 11 when I decided I wanted to go into the military and when I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. So I was always focused on service. That was always going to be an element of how I would adult. So when I was 11, my great uncle, who did serve in the Navy and was a Naval Academy graduate, he graduated with the class of 45. They graduated early in 1944 to go off to World War II. And he was a surface warfare officer on a ship in the war. And he was like a grandfather to me. He's very special to me. And growing up, he took me to a Navy Air Force game in Annapolis. And when I saw those midshipmen in their uniforms, marching together, doing something that displayed, it was like this perfect display of community and connection. Imagine, this feeling of this tribal feeling of really being part of a tight-knit group. I didn't know that is what I needed in my life. I just knew that whatever that was, I was really drawn to it. So I decided when I was 11 that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And when I was a senior in high school, I applied to Navy and Air Force. I don't know why I didn't want to go to West Point. I think I wanted to either ski or go to the Naval Academy. That's probably was my calculus. So West Point wasn't in there. But I got into both and I ended up selecting the Naval Academy, and I'm so glad I did. And I think it had so much to do with the family history there and wanting to be a little closer to home. Once I was at Navy, in my junior year at the Naval Academy, that's when we selected, at the time, that's when we could select, do you want to be in the Navy as a pilot or a surface warfare officer, or do you want to be in the Marine Corps? And you do some things in your summer before your senior year that help you decide that and help the military and the Marine Corps and Navy decide where they want you. I decided to spend my summer going to some Marine Corps training. And I wasn't sure about the Marine Corps at the time, but again, I went to that training for 4 weeks. And while I was there, this feeling of unity, this feeling of being connected to the people around me, this feeling of like being part of something that was hard, that was harder, in my perception, that again was like what resonated with me immediately. So I came out of that training saying, I'm all in on the Marine Corps. This is all I want to do with the rest of my life. I battled for it. I was selected. And then once I was in the Marine Corps, I had choices of or options of how to service select or where I could be within the Marine Corps in terms of specialties. I really wanted to lead Marines as a platoon commander, and there were at the time very limited opportunities for women to do that. So many of the occupational specialties don't include that kind of direct on the ground platoon leadership. So I asked for and got combat engineers as a specialty. It was the thing that this is my mindset at the time. It was the thing that could get me closest to the front lines. In 1999, the front lines were still a front line. They weren't necessarily everywhere as we think of them now. And it was the one place where, as a woman, one of the places as a woman that I could lead Marines as a platoon commander. So that's my military path. And I think what a little bit emblematic of how I've made decisions throughout my life, and that has continued.
That's awesome. And I forgot. So I don't know, it's been like 2 years, I think, maybe since we first met.
Yeah.
And I forgot about that very similar background, not the choosing military at age 11. I think I was choosing much simpler things at age 11, far from making any sort of adulting choices whatsoever.
It's very advanced.
But we did, and it shows, it's very impressive. But we do have a similar background in that I'm also the child of 2 Peace Corps volunteers, and had a similar debate of Peace Corps or military, and I actually got much farther along in the Peace Corps process before I decided, you know what, the Peace Corps doesn't have an age limit, but the military does, and so I joined the Navy. Similar thing about us.
I didn't remember that about you. I don't know if we talked about that when we met.
Maybe we didn't. I don't know. I was just
Yeah.
assuming that we did, and I forgot or something like that. We'll just assume that we didn't talk about it back then. It's all new now. But,
We're relearning.
Exactly. But that's really cool. And it sounds like very similar also in that you were in that pre 9/11 time where, you were choosing combat engineers at a time. I went to OCS and joined in 99 as well. I'm starting to forget everything. Maybe it was 2000. But anyway, was entering into this being a SWO, thinking this will be a nice little fun adventure for 4 years, and I'll probably get out and go on and do something else. You had a desire to lead Marines, and chose what seems like, I say seems because, I'm not as familiar with that, but I'm guessing that combat engineers, would that be a little bit similar to being like a CB on the Navy side, or is it different? It's a much cooler name. I'll give you guys that, like without a doubt, combat engineer.
Some of the similar skills, but the nature of the difference between Marines and Navy. Marines are really structured to get in and get out. We're there to be amphibious, ship to shore. We're there to do a job, do it quickly, and then hand that over to somebody who will do it for longer. So for instance, if you think about the Army's combat engineers, like they build things that are built to last. They build really sustainable things. Marines are building things that are designed to fall down and crumble to the ground 6 to 12 months later. Like that's not our concern because we're not there for the long haul. So all the skills overlap, and the Venn diagram overlaps in the middle, but Marine Corps has a different niche, and because the Marine Corps' mission is is unique and all that.
Yep, that makes sense. And so you said you wanted to lead Marines. Where were you then in your training, or maybe at that point you were already leading Marines when 9/11 happened? And I know you deployed to Iraq. So maybe if you want to pick up the story there a little bit.
Yeah.
Background.
Yeah, so I've been, my training was about 9 months, 10 months initially, starting in the summer of 99 when I graduated from Navy. And then I moved on to my first unit, and I was there for about a year when 9/11 happened. And that's when the world changed in so many different ways, but it's also when the nature of military service changed. And we went from being a peacetime military to being a wartime military. And that's, I think, that was a real turning point. And it's a time and a day that I look back to frequently when I think about what informed the rest of my time in the service and what has informed my interest in now connection and what it felt like in service, and how we came together in those days after 9/11, and what it felt like to be on active duty and be doing something so purposeful. And then fast forward, to deploying to Iraq and feeling that really intense purpose of game day. This was the Super Bowl of training for everybody that deployed there. And then coming home and spending some time trying to find that again. And it was really hard to find in the civilian world. So, if I fast forward us to the mission continues now, for me, this is where I found that, again, that purpose, that service, that ability to feel like you're really a part of something that's important and it's relevant to today, and it's connecting people, and it's bringing us together around the things that are most important, and the places where we can agree. When there's so much to disagree about in this world, service and connection to other people is, I think that's the place where we can all agree.
Absolutely. And that's a great transition to maybe talking a little bit more about the mission continues in a similar way. That's what kind of a very similar path that led me to IAVA, a desire to continue to serve in a different way. I, tried out working as a defense contractor and some other things like that, bounced back and forth as a reservist, back into uniform, doing some things, and really was looking for a way to kind of get a give back and to continue to serve, have that camaraderie similar to what you feel, and I think what most of us feel when we're in uniform. That led me to IAVA. It led you to the Mission Continues. So maybe you want to talk about your time with the Mission Continues, and then we can move to kind of the future and what the last, I don't know, how has it been, 6-7 months now that we've been in the pandemic, the changes from pre-pandemic TMC to where you guys are at today.
Yeah. So I've been with the Mission Continues for about 5.5 years now, and just had a wonderful, incredible experience here, getting to know this team, falling in love with this team and the work that we do. And the pandemic has been really fascinating for us because it changed the nature of how we do the work fundamentally and immediately. From being an organization that relies so heavily on in-person connections and bringing people together. And in fact, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, we rely also, and our veterans rely on large in-person gatherings. All of that was an immediate full stop. None of that can happen right now. And as COVID has progressed and we've been able to come out of quarantine postures, then at least we can get back to service in person and connecting with each other in person, even while, physically distanced and while wearing masks and maintaining safety measures. We are back to serving in person now. But that shift and the recognition that connection has to happen in a different way now was a place where we had to work hard to innovate early on in COVID and see that there are still millions of veterans out there who need to be connected, and in fact, their lives depend on it in many cases. And we've been at this intervention point for so long of, like, if you physically come out of your home and come to us and experience this service in person, then we can assure you that you're gonna feel that you have something that you were missing, and it could save your life. And we hear over and over again about how this saves people will tell us, this saved my life. I was right there on the precipice, and I came out to a service project. Someone invited me to join a program, and it was the thing that allowed me to remember what was so powerful about my life. So as we now think about how we're connecting veterans to each other and keeping them connected and impacting communities, it has really just been a different way of thinking about the work as opposed to doing the work any differently. We noticed early on in COVID that this was a trend that we observed, and our veterans were participating in actively, but we as a team were observing that the issue areas in communities were so consistently focused on food insecurity and hunger. And even if an organization, or even if our veterans and our service platoons were supporting an elementary school or a Boys and Girls Club or a neighborhood association pre-pandemic that had designs on upgrading their spaces or creating outdoor classrooms or playgrounds, and they had all these different goals and ideas and exciting things we were working on with them. Once COVID started, they immediately pivoted to feeding people. It just became the higher of the needs in the order of needs. And so our veterans pivoted to supporting them and continuing to support their partners and supporting this new mission of food insecurity. And that has continued. And so all we did as a team was see that, harness it, and be able to say, we're going to put a stamp on this and call it Operation Nourish. And we're going to draw a line around it and say, like, right now, TMC is singularly focused on food insecurity. Our team, our operations, our program, our focus has become food insecurity, while that is the greatest need in communities, and will continue to be our focus as long as that is the greatest need that we're seeing emerge in communities. And that's what our veterans are telling us. So that's how Operation Nourish was born.
No, and that's great, and it ties in. So a few, I think, great points there and things I want to touch on. So, I'm in the New York City area and have been volunteering with the Mission Continues for most of the time that I've been here. There's different platoons for each of the boroughs. I've volunteered with the Brooklyn, the Bronx, and the Manhattan platoons. And I think one of the first events I went to was with the Manhattan platoon up in Harlem, working on a neighborhood garden area. And this was long before the pandemic. And it was just such a great experience. I was there as a volunteer. So it's sort of like you were already ahead of that need that led into now. But also, I think one of the great things about the Mission Continues is you really are and you can maybe, and you have said this more eloquently than me, you're kind of providing the framework for veterans in their own communities to take on service projects and to decide what their communities need and to lead on those. And you all, as sort of the headquarters element, if you will, are just providing them with the tools to make it as easy as possible. And I think that's a great part of not only what you were doing then, but also now the Operation Nourish, because, you know, food insecurity seems to be almost a defining feature of COVID-19 right now. We see food bank lines expanding exponentially in so many places across the country, and so many people who before this never thought about visiting a food bank, and now they are. And so it's great that you guys can take the lead on this.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I'm so proud of our veterans for seeing it and for running straight to it. You know, I mean, it's one of those, you know, in the military, we talk about running towards the sound of the gunfire and I'll meet you there. And that's exactly how this felt. I mean, this was really an initiative of we see the need, we're there, we're on it. And it's been a real point of pride and, you know, impact for our team to be able to support those efforts.
Do you have any sense, I'm guessing probably not, but I know one of the things I was pre-COVID that I was looking forward to having a chance to do was to volunteer for one of the mass deployments. I'm guessing those are on hold indefinitely maybe right now, or?
They're going to look a little bit different for a while. Yeah. I mean, they rely on hundreds of people coming together, and mass deployment, again, the spirit of what is a mass deployment is about these veterans having this intensely and intimately connected experience of being on the ground together. They sleep in dorms, they spend their time together, they sweat, they bleed, they are together in this real intensity. And that is not, I mean, that's not legal in some places right now, and it's not possible in this current world. So this year's, what was our mass deployment, which we are calling Operation Bayou City Blitz, so focused on Houston. The Operation Bayou City Blitz is still happening. It's not going to happen in a classic mass deployment form. So it's going to be service projects that are spread out over the month of November, that are still focused on the same community partners we had planned, still with an impact. And this is we are making impact on communities that have been affected by Hurricane Harvey. So, you know, still dealing with the impacts of Harvey in Houston. This is still where we're focusing our work. So excited to do that in November. Again, it's disappointing to us that we can't do it in the way that we love so much, this real connected, intense experience, but the impact will be there. It'll be felt locally by the Houston veterans on the ground. I anticipate that is what 2021 will look like as well. So we had planned a 2021 mass deployment in New York City around the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I don't think that kind of gathering, I don't think it's responsible for us to plan for that right now, especially in New York City. So we've put plans for that. We will get back to that idea, but the sentiment of having an operation that is focused very intensely for a period of time on a particular community or a small geographic area, like we're doing in Houston this year. We will do something like that again in 2021, but we're not going to fly hundreds of veterans in to have this, you know, intense experience like we have had. It won't be the same. Things have to look a little different right now.
No, absolutely, and I think that's spot on. And maybe we can continue to populate, and I'll ask Hannah or folks there to maybe populate. So if you want to throw out some websites or things like that, where should people be going? Maybe if they're new to the Mission Continues and they like what they're hearing and they want to get involved.
Yeah, well, we just redid our website. So go to the website. It's beautiful. I love it very much, missioncontinues.org. And there's a tab there, get involved. And you can find, if you scroll down on the very first page there, it's got our whole map of service platoon networks. You can find an event near you very easily. We have open applications for our Women Veterans Leadership Program. So that'll be open for another couple of weeks. So for women veterans out there who are looking to upskill their leadership, that application will be open for a little while longer.
Nice. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that program? I know that's certainly providing support to women veterans and finding ways to empower them is something that I think both of our organizations are focused on, but we'd love to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing with that program.
Yeah, so this is one that is a long time in the making. We launched it. We just graduated our first cohort of our Women Veterans Leadership Program last week or 2 weeks ago. But it started 5 years ago, I think now, with our Women Veterans Leadership Summit, which we held annually for 4 years, leading up to this program, and where we were learning about and better understanding some of the challenges that women veterans particularly face when they transition out of the military. And recognizing that, so we're not focused on the healthcare aspect. We've got, we have so many great partners that are focusing on healthcare and specific to women veterans and some of those more, particular challenges. We chose to focus where we have the most competence and experience, which is on the leadership skills. And so, we took this program to a place where women come through this program and they learn and they gain some of the specific skills that, frankly, women, veterans or not, need and can use to help thrive in this world when in comparison and in partnership with their male peers. So we were observing trends, just like we have in this country, of women just not reaching the top ranks of leadership. It's just statistically, women are less likely to get there, significantly less likely to get there. Women of color, it's like a fraction. I mean, really, really much less likely to get to levels of leadership. And something is holding them back in that process. And it's not choice. That has been debunked many times over. It's not because women are choosing to leave the workforce and have babies. Like, there's something else really, truly systemic that's holding them back. We're trying to get at some of that. So it's things like effective communication. It's things like negotiation skills. It's things like confidence and authenticity and building your own leadership story that allows you then to better appreciate and understand where you belong in a room, and making the choice to walk into a conference room and sit at the table instead of sitting at one of the chairs along the window on the back,
Right.
Which just women do too much. And we want to help break that cycle and help these women gain the confidence they need to continue to lead.
Well, and I imagine you probably personally bring a lot to that conversation, having been someone that went to the Naval Academy, starting back in the 90s when, granted it wasn't brand new, but, it continues to be a challenge, I think, to be a woman or to be a minority in any of the service academies. And then beyond that, then to join the Marine Corps, where I think, there's the fewest women in the Marine Corps out of any of the branches. So I'm guessing you probably have some real world experiences to bring to that discussion. I don't necessarily need you, or if you don't want to go into those on now, but I imagine you can bring some real world experience to those conversations to help the women veterans of today.
Yeah, I try to. And I mean, I get more from these women veterans than they'll ever get from me. But what I'm always amazed by is how consistent and common our stories are. So I have a couple of stories that I tell to our cohorts when I talk to them in the beginning or when I talk to them at the end, and when I'm in conversations with them. And every time the heads are just nodding north and south. And while I went through when I was a Marine, I thought my story was really unique, and I was going through something that was so unique to me. And like, there's no way that other people are experiencing this. I'm all alone in this. That's the power of this program, is these women come together, and for the first time they realize they are not alone in their experiences. And we have all experienced so many of the same things, and have tools and tips for battling it, and for coming through stronger and more connected to each other with a stronger network, and a desire to go turn around and help others come up through that system.
Excellent. That's great. Maybe now is a good time to shift to something that kind of brought our organizations as well as some other organizations together recently, and continues to be a very big topic today. It was in the debate yesterday, and that's all about voting, particularly voting by mail. You and I joined 9 other veterans of very different backgrounds, different eras, to co-author a piece that ran in Medium. I think it also ran in the USA Today. It's certainly online, and I think we can post it. It's still very relevant. Kind of talking about the importance of veterans leading in having discussions about voting, talking about the safety and the utility of voting by mail and absentee voting, especially as it relates to something that the military has done and continues to do since the Civil War. And really the importance of veterans being involved in this process, in this discussion, not just voting, volunteering to work as a poll worker, making sure that our voices are heard, so that people are hearing about not just the issues that are facing veterans today, but more specific things like the issues facing women veterans and women in the military and things like that. I'm trying to, I printed it out. I'm trying to remember. It feels like it was eons ago. I guess it was August 13th, I think, that we first printed, or that article first posted. And I would say, like, between then and now, we knew we were kind of like starting a conversation about something that was important, but I think just even in between that time, it has really exploded kind of in importance and relevance. Would you agree, or any of your thoughts on that issue?
Oh yeah, I mean, it got pulled onto the national debate stage last night between two presidential candidates. I absolutely think this is one of the most important things facing our country right now. And you know, the Mission Continues standpoint on this, and mine, is that we need people to vote. Our country is better and stronger when everybody votes. If we could get 100% voter participation, it would be such an incredible score for us as a representative democracy. It is the most important thing we can do. And it's not just every 4 years, but we have a huge election coming up every 4 years. There's a presidential election, but voting for your local officials, you know, voting consistently and having your voice be heard is so important. The veterans' place in this is the fact that we have in my view, an obligation and an opportunity to lead here. We have a tremendous amount of social capital in this country. People listen to veterans. They do, for better or worse. We're still associated with one of the most trusted institutions in this country, the Defense Department, and ultimately veterans are a very trusted group of people. So when we speak, people listen and they will follow. And when we lead, people will follow us. And so my hope is that we can lead on the issues of the day. And this really is one of them. Like, we just need people to participate in every election. And so this one is upon us, and it's important that people participate now. We don't have a lot of chances to do this, but the issues that are facing our country are deeply important to all of us, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum. The issues facing you in your daily life are deeply important. So now that we know, if we can all agree that we want everybody to vote, regardless of who they vote for, regardless of where they come from and what their views and politics are, now we have to remove the barriers to voting. We have to provide access. We have to ensure that everybody can cast a vote safely. They can cast it securely. They can cast it in the most efficient possible way. And we're again, it's an unprecedented year where COVID has gotten in the way of so much of that. And I think we have to work extra hard to make sure that those barriers are removed for people.
I think that's exactly right. And that's why, we started the Vote Hub. You can go to IAVA.org and find the Vote Hub, gives you information on registering to vote, finding your polling location, getting set up for mail-in voting. But that's one of, untold number of websites you can go to. You don't need to go there, but I think that is the key. And I think there is a bit of a untruth out there that, voting by mail or voting by absentee balloting benefits one group over another and things like that. And I think we've also seen that that's not the case. What it really is about making sure that people have access to voting. And within the military, this has been done for a long, long time. And I know both you and I, and probably every other veteran and everyone serving today, is very used to seeing official U.S. government produced material telling us how we and our families, if they're also there, can vote by mail, not just when you're stationed overseas, but even domestically. If I'm, my first duty station was in Washington State, even though I joined from Washington, D.C. And so I was able to vote by mail from there. So I didn't have to worry about changing my registration location, things like that. And so it's a very common thing. And I think, again, to your point, like having veterans lead on this discussion and say, this isn't a new issue. This is something that our country is very familiar with and does quite a lot about and deal with.
And that we know how to do.
Yeah.
We know how to do this. So we need to trust in the institutions that have been doing this for a very long time. And we need to get past the fear that there's something broken in the system and trust that that's not the case. And we've proven that many, many times over. So we just need people to have trust and faith in the government processes that make this work. It is a really incredible, complex process, but it has worked for many years.
And to your point, increasing the voter turnout. I think that's one thing that always surprises me, is the relatively small percent of the voting eligible population that turns out to vote, even for very contested presidential elections. And then when you look at midterms and stuff like that, it even drops more substantially. So yes, definitely advocating for people getting out and doing that. It did come up in the debates yesterday and talked about, there's been, it sounds like increasing number of things to talk about with mail-in voting. I think some of the rhetoric now is like, okay, maybe we should, if you are able to vote in person, get out there and vote early, because you're talking now, I think the hanging chads of 2000 are now the naked ballots of 2020 and things like that. And so I think it gets back to your point about, educating and things like that, learning what the process is to vote by mail. It's not necessarily as straightforward as it is when you vote in person, but it also isn't all that complicated, I think, if you just take your time. And so people need to start early, I think, is the thing. That said,
Yeah.
The election's already started. Some states are already doing early voting, and so it's happening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you don't have the same support available to you when you don't vote in person. So, I mean, that's the one drawback. But it's safe, it's secure, it's efficient. Your ballot will be counted. I mean, those are the things that I think people have to trust. Of course, if you're able to vote in person, vote in person. But if that's not an option for you, then voting by mail is a perfectly safe alternative.
Exactly. I was excited. I just yesterday got my email from the New York State Board of Elections that I was accepted as a poll worker. So
there you go.
So excited about that. Yeah. So I can
Yeah.
now pick my available dates for early voting as well as November 3rd and things. So
I got my precinct assignment last weekend for my election officer post. And I'm very excited about it. I've never volunteered to be an election officer on election day. So this was new for me, and us writing that article together was what spurred my interest and even my knowledge of how to do that. So I was super excited to be one of the 500,000 people that are filling volunteer gaps this year, because most of our volunteer population at these polls on any given election day is typically elderly, and many are at risk. So I'm really excited to be stepping up. I'm glad you are too.
excellent. Yeah, same. I'm excited. Looking forward to it. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to get picked. Now, once, as to your point, it seemed like there has been a very overwhelming turnout of people looking to support and to make sure we do have free and fair elections, which was really good to see. I really didn't know how to take it, but like you, before we wrote that article and before the kind of discussion around the shortage of poll workers, that wasn't an issue that really tracked with me. But I'm glad to see that the people have responded, and it sounds like hopefully it's everywhere, but that we're going to have good amounts of poll worker coverage. So excited about that, and looking forward to talking about how your experience goes.
Yeah, me too.
If we could, let's go back a little bit further, still in the COVID era, but even a little earlier. I was trying to find the email that you sent. You sent a pretty incredible email, I think, out to everyone that is volunteered or is a member of the Mission Continues. I couldn't find it quickly, but it was, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but it was in the days after the murder of George Floyd. Really impressive and open letter that you wrote to the community, talking about why it's important to be having these discussions and the things that we want to do going forward. Would you be comfortable talking a little bit about what you wrote and what that meant to you?
Yeah, and I'll preface this by saying we haven't done enough, and we need to do more. So that was an initial salvo for the Mission Continues, to be able to publicly state we're gonna say something that feels bold to us right now, and then we're going to make sure that we live up to that in every sense of the word. So essentially, the letter that we published, the line that sticks out most to me and is most powerful is that racism, hatred, and bigotry will find no quarters in our ranks. It was a very declarative statement for us to say that it has no place here. Now, if you're on a journey with us and you want to be on that journey of learning, and you are at the beginning of that journey, come on the journey. And not only come on the journey, but we're actually, through our programs and through our service platoons, we teach the skills that will help you move along that journey. We've been doing this for years. Inclusion, diversity, cultural competence are things that we have worked very hard to build skills around with our veteran population. Come with us and be on the journey with us. But if you're not interested in being on that journey and you're not in the same place as we are, then our organization is not the place for you. And it's less about our tolerance than it frankly is about yours. You will not enjoy the events you come to, because we are building an inclusive environment. We work hard. We're intentional about inclusion. We talk about it. We're open about it. We're forthright about it. And the population of veterans that serve with us are a beautifully, incredibly talented, diverse group of veterans. So if that's not a space you're comfortable in, then volunteer with someone else, and that's okay. And I respect that. I'm glad you're serving, but we won't be the fit for you. And it was also a declaration that we're gonna push people a little bit on this, and sometimes not even a little bit. Sometimes we're gonna push people a lot out of what feels into what feels like a challenging space for a lot of people right now, as we all are learning. And as a white woman, I'm learning every day, all the time, constantly about how to lead in this environment, how to lead a diverse team in this environment. As a white woman, it is, there's so much. My learning curve is steep and long, and will continue on. And again, we have so much more to do. Those words were words, and I recognize that, and that's not where our commitment stops. It certainly isn't where our commitment started, and it is not where it will stop. But it felt good to be able to take a stand and say, at least to be able to say, at the time, this is where we stand on this, and now our actions will align with those words, and the way we resource our organization, the way we design our organization, the way we operate are all aligned with the notion that was represented in that very declarative statement.
No, well, I mean, personally, I want to say thank you to you for doing that and for leading the Mission Continues in that way, because I definitely know how difficult that can be. One, just to talk about race and race relations openly is challenging. It's challenging for minorities. It's challenging for me as a Black man. I'm sure it's challenging for you as a white woman, but it's even, I won't even say doubly challenging. It's quadruply challenging when you're doing it as the face of an organization, as the face of a national organization. I struggled with talking about just my own experiences. When I put something out about IAVA, it wasn't even saying necessarily this is what IAVA is. It was just sort of my own thoughts and views at that same time. And you take a lot on when you step out forward that much and talk about something that can be so polarizing and divisive. It shouldn't be polarizing and divisive, but we certainly know, and I'm sure if you ever look on social media on posts around this, that, Mission Continues, and certainly IAVA, when you post about certain things, just turn off the comments because it's not even worth looking at. So I applaud you, and I thank you for taking that step and for doing that, and for acknowledging that, it is the first step in a long journey. It's the same for me, and it's the same for IAVA, and I think it's the same for anyone, but you got to take that first step. And when you do, I think a lot of people will follow, and a lot of people then have, I think, the space and the ability to follow on and have more conversations about that. So you give people a chance. And I think that letter gave people a chance to talk about things that they wanted to talk about. And I think that's one of the great things about the Mission Continues. As you said, you are in these communities where this really is being affected. I think a lot of veteran organizations, just by nature of sometimes who wants to get involved with a veteran organization, they're not necessarily always in the most diverse areas. And organizations don't necessarily always represent the diversity of the veteran community, but yours does, and you're operating in these communities. And so I think for you to take that leadership stance was incredible. So again, I just want to say thank you for that, because I think that was really powerful and strong, and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for sharing your story too, Jeremy. That was really powerful for me. And when I read that story, that is a constant, very personal reminder to me as a leader of why this matters to me as a person and as a white woman, and why it's important for me to step up and continue to lead in this way. And you make a good point. Sometimes this job of being the leader of an organization, sometimes you have to work really hard to represent your veterans and your population, and sometimes you have to work in a different way to lead them. I borrow that from someone very wise who shared that advice with me once, that you can't just represent the veterans in your network. Sometimes you have to lead and step out a little bit. And so this is sometimes these are unpopular statements, and that's okay, because there's a right side of history, and I want the Mission Continues. The Mission Continues wants to be on it, and I want that for us too. So we will continue to lead with conviction, and we're going to continue to make mistakes along the way, and we're going to continue to learn and just keep on this journey.
And there's nothing wrong with mistakes. I mean, I always say that especially in the military, I mean, any leader that is going to lead is going to make mistakes. I don't think you can be a bold and decisive leader without making mistakes. And I think the issue is, do you learn from those, and do you try and improve and get better? I made untold numbers of mistakes as a young division officer and in the Navy, and have certainly done so since then. So that's I think a big part of being a leader is making mistakes and learning from them. But to kind of continue, I know we're already past 1:30, but if we can go on a little further, I want to touch on a couple of other issues that you've also stepped out in front on, and that was around the killings of Vanessa Guillen, Specialist Vanessa Guillen at Fort could. You joined a call for a lot of action to change that. We've been fighting for a number of pieces of legislation in Washington, D.C. to change the way the military looks at military sexual assault and sexual trauma and how it's handled within the military justice system. And wonder if you have any thoughts, or you personally, or as the mission continues, President, for how important that is to you and the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important, and it's incredibly important to the women that serve with us. We heard that loud and clear from them, and whether I needed to hear that from them or not, I did, and I continue to, and will continue to lead on this issue. The military is simply not hearing this. This is just a really challenging topic. And while I think the military and the Defense Department has worked to put systems and processes in place to enable reporting, what the military is not doing is attacking the culture that's making it possible for any of these incidents to occur. Vanessa Guillen's death was a tragedy. Her murder was a tragedy. It was a horrifying, horrifying look at the worst possible thing that can happen when we fail to support women, and again, particularly women of color, who are so badly marginalized in our society, and even more so in the military. This is what can happen. This is not what happens every time, but this is what can happen. And this was a high profile case that was just absolutely stomach turning and terrifying. And it resonated so strongly and felt very personal to so many women who have served in the military, so many of whom, an overwhelming number of whom, have experienced military sexual trauma and military sexual assault. And that, when a story like that comes up, I think you have to take the opportunity to say, enough is enough. It is time for something to change. There are best practices out there that can inform the way the military adjudicates these cases, listens to complaints, creates an environment where the Vanessa Guillens of the world feel comfortable reporting that something has happened to them. I mean, the fact that she felt like she had to bear the burden of her own assault and her own threat, and physical safety was being threatened, is horrifying. And if that's not a wake-up call for the entire Defense Department, then I really don't know what will be. So this is a place where we're eager to lead and want to make sure that this cannot go unnoticed.
Yeah, and I think you touched on, to me, one of the most telling and most important parts of that story, and it's that not every case of sexual harassment, sexual assault in the military leads to murder, but so many issues begin with sexual assault, sexual harassment that goes unchecked, unpunished. And for someone so junior in the military as Vanessa Guillen was, to already not have any confidence in the military justice system, I think that speaks volumes to how the military justice system is failing so many. And if it's failing your junior personnel, then it's failing across the board, because not only are the junior personnel the ones that need that system the most, that's also the largest segment of the military.
Yeah.
There's far more E4s out there than there are O4s, and if we're not protecting them, we're not protecting anybody. So thank you again for leading on that, because it is an important subject, and it's one that there's still so much to do. And her story at least is a rallying cry for so many, and I think it'll continue to be so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let me pause for a minute. I think we may have a question. I don't know if there are many, but Hannah, do you have a question for us?
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. So this question is for both of you. Has the VA joined in on the important opportunities from each of your organization's programs to support veterans both in person and virtually?
Do you want to start, Mary Beth?
Sure. Yes. So we have a strong partnership with the VA, and I think that they're an organization that is a large bureaucracy that is working really hard to do the right thing for veterans every single day. They put veterans at the center of all that they do. I get personally frustrated sometimes with the pace at which things happen there, but that's true because I don't have a lot of experience serving in the federal government outside of the military. But I have had nothing but positive interactions with VA leadership around support for veterans. Again, recognition that there's an awful lot to do, and I don't have a whole lot of patience for the talking points that only highlight the things that are happening that are good, because I continue to hear from our veterans that that things are getting screwed up on the ground. And so we keep pressing on the VA. The VA has, I think, really come a long way in listening to organizations like ours who are not, we're not a congressionally chartered veteran service organization. So we hold a lot less lobbying power. We hold no lobbying power with the VA. We only hold our tens of thousands of veteran members that that look to us to help raise some of these issues. And that's become a lot more important to the VA over the years. And I've seen that. So our relationship has grown, I think, tremendously. But they've been overwhelmingly supportive of our place in the world for support of veterans.
That's good to hear, and I think it's important that you started the way that you did, because I think a lot of times the VA doesn't see us as supportive of them, and the reality is we are incredibly supportive of the VA. We will be the first to tell everyone that most veterans prefer the care that they get from the VA. I don't get my own personal health care from the VA, but I've got the GI Bill. I'm continuing to wait for the day when I decide that I'm going to go back to school and use my GI Bill benefits. I don't know what I'm going to go back to school for, but we'll figure that out. But we hear all the time that veterans prefer the healthcare. And again, that's only part of what the VA does. But veterans tell us they prefer the healthcare that they get from the VA. They said sometimes it takes too long to get an appointment. Sometimes they get the runaround, their records get lost and things like that. So I see IAVA as someone who's here to push the VA to continually be better. And to your point, we don't want to hear the talking points of the great things that we've done. We want to hear about how they're fixing the areas where it's not as successful. Two things that were great that the VA is doing right now that I certainly give them credit for is the movement towards electronic health records. I think that's a long overdue shift, so that now your DoD records will just electronically transfer right into the VA. That's long overdue. The telehealth increase during the pandemic has been huge and is something I think that is going to go forward. They're hiring lots and lots of new healthcare workers, something that we've called on for a long time. And so that's all great to see. That said, there's still areas where, we want to see lots of improvement. One of the things we're on, similar to the mission continues, we're not a congressionally chartered organization, but we will certainly give them our feedback. And we take part in semi-regular calls with Secretary Wilkie. The most latest one was actually just this morning. They asked us to submit questions in advance. About more than a week ago, I submitted a question about their mask policy regarding the pandemic. If you go to the VA's COVID-19 page, it says nothing about wearing a mask. When you look at how you can protect yourself, if you look at measures that veterans can take, it literally does not say anything about wearing a mask at any time. And I think that's incredible at this point to not even mention that. So we submitted in writing a question 8 days ago to the VA, say, hey, on this morning's call, can you clarify with us what VA's mask policy is? And they just didn't address the question whatsoever. So that's where it can get frustrating. You're almost kind of tossing up softballs for them to be able to talk about the good that they're doing, and then they just ignore these things. So, we have a semi-contentious relationship, I'd say, with the VA. We try and
it's healthy.
Exactly. But I try and personally keep it very positive. We will always talk only about policy and only talk about ways that we want to see the VA improve the care that they're providing to the entire veteran population. And sort of to your point, the VA has an incredibly huge mission. Like, they do so much more than healthcare. It's benefits, it's cemeteries, it's a lot of stuff. And I don't envy the people that have to take all that on, because it is an incredible challenge. But they also have an incredible responsibility, and they've got a $220 billion budget. So we want to make sure that they're using that wisely to take care of veterans everywhere.
Yeah.
Hannah, any other questions? We've gone over, but I really appreciate this conversation. It's been great. We'll see if we had any other questions, though.
No additional questions came in. Thanks.
All right. Well, Mary Beth, thank you again. Any leaving behind statements or comments you want to make, places you want to direct folks to with the mission continues, things you want to maybe take away if they came in a little bit late, things you want them to check out when they move forward?
Mostly just to emphasize the hope that the veterans who are listening here will find a way to stay connected. It's really hard during this pandemic, and people are increasingly socially isolated. And then, by the way, if you're an introvert like me, you can get used to being socially isolated and then forget that you need to connect with people in order to be mentally healthy. So just, this is an area where I think the mission continues, and organizations like ours play a huge part, as we're helping to connect people not only to each other, but to purpose and to belonging and to a way forward that is full of impact and is full of hope and is full of promise. And at a time like this, when people are feeling so divided, service and connection can heal that and can bring people together in a whole different way that is impactful and has this incredible double bottom line of impact. We're impacting veterans, and by coming out and serving, you're impacting communities. So get out there, serve, go to our website to find a place to do it. Go to our partners' websites. There are so many opportunities to do that. And finally, vote, go vote. Vote now. Vote early. I won't say vote often. Vote once.
It's almost sometimes hard to not add that in, because that's kind of the joke say, vote early, vote often. But yeah. Vote early.
Vote often if you want. Only one of your ballots is going to get counted. That's how that works. But vote. Absolutely.
No, that was great. I totally agree. I think the double impact that people get from community service is under discussed. Like, I know I feel it personally when I am able to get out with the Mission Continues with the local platoon and do something. I feel better about myself. I connect with new people, reconnect with old friends. You learn something about your community, frankly, and it's incredibly rewarding. So yeah, please go to the Mission Continues, check it out. If you're a veteran that's in need of support of anything, you can also go to IAVA and do our Quick Reaction Force, quickreactionforce.org, for 24/7 care for any help that you might need. You can go to the Vote Hub. If you haven't registered to vote yet, please do. There's still time, so vote now. And Mary Beth, thank you again. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to be partnered with you. Looking forward to much more of that in the future.
Absolutely. And thank you for everyone that tuned in and listened. We really appreciate your time, and look forward to doing more of these in the future. Thanks again, Mary Beth.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.